All right. We are joined today by Dorian Gray, the founder of the No Concentration Camps in Colorado movement. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Dorian. We really appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I don't know if founder's the right word. I posted about it on the internet.
Well,
Okay.
we're going to call you the
I
founder.
I named it
Evangelist.
evangelist. I like that.
Well, if you named the thing, I feel like that goes a long way. But yeah, here with Constant Gardner and Bug, of course. But yeah, Dorian, thanks so much for taking time to join us. We just wanted to learn a little bit more about this organization, your involvement in it, and kind of, the whole deal. So if you had to, walk us through the kind of inception of this whole thing and, what its goals are, and if you were going to, pitch it to somebody who knew nothing about it, what would that look like?
Certainly. So, No Concentration Camps is Colorado is a coalition of activists, community leaders, and organizations, and we're focused on 5 demands from the state of Colorado. No further ICE expansion in Colorado, closure of the existing ICE detention facility in Aurora, divestment from private prison contracts, reinvestment into housing, education, healthcare, and other social needs, and an immediate response from all Colorado elected officials. In some of our earlier stuff that we had put out there, we had put number 5 as an immediate special session of the Colorado General Assembly. That happened. Our issues weren't addressed, so we want immediate response. As far as the inception goes, there was a ACLU of Colorado FOIA lawsuit, a Freedom of Information Act request, made against the federal government on behalf of the ACLU of Colorado. And what that request revealed is that ICE plans to expand their detention infrastructure in Colorado through the contracting of 6 new sites. We call ourselves No Concentration Camps in Colorado, specifically because we want to highlight that these are, by definition, concentration camps. The Encyclopedia Britannica defines a concentration camp as an internment center for political prisoners and members of national or minority groups who are confined for reasons of state security, exploitation, or punishment, usually by executive decree or military order. Persons are placed in such camps on the basis of identification with a particular ethnic group or political group rather than as individuals and without benefit of either indictment or fair trial, which perfectly describes what these facilities are, except for adding to that, each of these facilities are also for profit. They receive a per diem contract amount from the state and per detainee, and so their profit incentive is to intern as many people within those facilities as possible for as long as possible at the highest occupancy available at the lowest cost possible.
Yeah. So this is really kind of like when people talk about private prisons.
Indeed.
There's a big overlap with what's happening, or what is proposed to be happening, and what this group is trying to prevent.
These are indeed private prisons, and that's why we're focused on 3 and 4. Our issues or our demands 3 and 4: divestment from private prison contracts and reinvestment into housing, education, healthcare, and other social needs, because there's many studies out there that show that communities that invest in housing and education and healthcare and where people have their social needs met have a lot less crime, whereas communities that open new private prisons tend to have stagnating economies. And so it's a measure there of divestment versus investment.
Right. Okay. And what tactics has No Concentration Camps in Colorado used thus far to try to achieve these 5 goals? What's kind of the organization's MO?
So, we try to have we're a very diverse coalition. So No Concentration Camps in Colorado isn't a single org, but we're a coalition of organizations that includes Indivisible Denver Action, Indivisible Colorado, the Colorado ACLU, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Solidarity Warriors. We're in talks right now with Aurora Unido CSO, which is a CIRC sister group, but we have a CIRC within our coalition as well. They're forming a coalition down in Colorado Springs, and the idea is to have a unified front of many different organizations focusing on a variety of tactics, from protest to outreach and education to legal avenues of trying to pass legislation that targets the opening of these sites, things like really looking into the water tables of the area. CoreCivic has gotten in trouble for polluting water before. There's a lot of different ways that we're going at it. As far as me specifically, my role, I focus on outreach and education and helping to gather these people together, because I know that I alone can't stop these sites from opening, and PSL alone can't stop these sites from opening. DACAC alone can't stop these sites from opening. So the goal is to try to bring everybody together to achieve these goals as a united front. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you then open to other organizations that might, like, if they hear the podcast and they are interested in being a part, should they reach out to you to sign on?
Absolutely. Open call for organizers. If you're a group, if you're an activist, if you're an organizer, if you're an organization, you want to help us out with this, you want to help us get some legislation passed, maybe you want to help us plan some protests, facilitate any of our outreach, there's a contact us section on our website, nocampscolorado.org, and fill that out. Goes right to an email chain that includes myself, some members of IPT, and our coalition ambassadors. But yeah, do you guys want me to go into a little bit more detail about like who our sister orgs are, who signed on to our letter to Governor Polis? One thing that's happening right now is Governor Polis hasn't said a word about this for or against the creation of these new ICE detention facilities. And so one of the first things that we had done as an org, quote unquote, was I, as the Denver protests Instagram and Threads administrator, through our Denver protest Threads account, I had reached out to the community there and was like, everybody just go comment no concentration camps in Colorado on anything Polis posts. This is a digital occupation of his comment section. We'll protest there. And we've had a little bit of a focus since then on getting him to say something, because he hasn't said a word. So as the coalition grew, we drafted a formal letter to Polis, and myself and two members of the immigrant protection teams of Colorado went and hand delivered them to the office. Hold on. I just got a little error that popped up on the screen here. Do I still have you guys?
Yeah, we still got you.
Okay.
That's Jared Polis trying to prevent people from slandering him, is what that error message is.
Oh, heard. Gotcha.
Yes. And
So
this is
he's a tech guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you think he doesn't have that power, but
he does. And this is an unapologetic Jared Polis hate podcast.
Good.
So we are fully on board with all any bothering of him occupying his comment section, because it is pretty egregious that he's just pretending it's not happening. Like, he's not even speaking out in favor of it. He's just like, I'm gonna pretend it's not happening. Like, no, we can't do that. Like, admit it.
Yeah,
admit it.
Our governor is supposed to represent all people who call Colorado home. He's our elected official for that reason, and he's ignoring a huge part of his constituency right now in favor of the federal government. I don't think that that's very representative of him. But our letter was signed by Indivisible Colorado, Indivisible NoCo, Indivisible Colorado Springs, Indivisible Denver, PSL Denver, the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition, the American Friends Service Committee, IPT, the Immigrant Protection Teams of Colorado, Solidarity Warriors 5051 Colorado, Grassroots Pueblo, Bridge to Brighton, and the General Strike US. Since then, I haven't added the Denver Communist logo, but DENCOM has voiced their full support as well.
And so when you say you delivered this letter, I'm curious about that experience. So you walked into
the Capitol,
I assume, and handed someone the letter, and I'm just curious what like that experience was like.
Yeah, I walked into the Capitol and I asked the security guard, "Hey, where's Polis at? I need to bring him this." And he pointed me to where his office was. So I went up there and I met up with Dana Miller, who's an amazing activist from the Immigrant Protection Teams of Colorado, and another IPT person was there as well. And you know, they were like, "I'm not sure where he is." And so I went back down to the security guard and I was like, "Hey, you know, I don't see his office clearly marked. Can you help me out?" And he was like, "Well, usually he goes to the treasurer's office." So, all right. So I go back up there. We end up meeting with this staffer, Arlo. And Arlo took the campaign letter that we had given him, and he said that he can't promise anything. And we're like, all right. And so we put in a formal request while we were there to meet with him in person. We recently got a response on that. He's not going to meet with us in person, but a staffer will. And we're deciding whether or not we're going to take that. In the meantime, I just stuffed a bunch of copies of the letter into various letter boxes, and I consider that hand delivering.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that, yeah, he has to respond to that or have his staffers respond to it. So you said you guys are considering whether or not to meet with the staffer. Why, you know, what would be the downside?
That his administration gets to say that they met with us.
Okay.
Without actually doing something, without actually making a response as an administration. There's something to be said about figureheads in a government, and Polis is the figurehead for Colorado. He's the if there was a unitary executive of Colorado, it would be Polis. And for him to not say anything shows a bending of the knee to the federal government by our state. And you know, we say stand up, fight back. We don't believe in bending the knee when it comes to human rights.
Totally. I would also just say that you know, that when you meet with if you meet with the staffer, they're just going to pass the buck and be like, "Well, I don't really know how to answer that. Like, I'd have to ask the governor about that directly." Or, you know, it's like if you meet with him, the buck kind of stops with him.
Yeah.
So it's easier if he doesn't meet with you. It's easier for him to just continue to kind of not answer the questions directly, you know, whereas like the staffer could just be like, "Oh, well, you know, I'm not sure. I'll have to get clarification from him." And then you still just don't really get the answers that you need. So it is sort of like a way for him to dodge accountability.
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, I would like for him to address some of the abuses that are going on currently at the Aurora Geo facility. It's oftentimes easy to forget that one of these facilities is already, you know, in our backyard. And Geo, the private prison company that owns the Aurora contract facility, they currently have a Supreme Court case that's under Supreme Court review. It's a class action lawsuit representing 60,000 detainees who alleged that they were forced into slave labor by Geo, and that's how they're keeping their operation costs lower so that they can make a profit.
Yeah, that's not at all surprising because that is one of the goals of the prison system, certainly the private prison system, is that type of slavery is just very commonplace in prisons throughout the US. So it's no surprise that they would be doing that in the ICE detention. I actually have a logistics question. So with these 6 proposed ICE facilities, are any of these like existing prisons that they're converting over, or are these all like 6 new facilities that they would be building?
So many of these are facilities that have been left abandoned by private prison contractors. So for example, Walsenburg. Walsenburg was a private prison owned by CoreCivic and left abandoned 5 years ago because they were receiving tax cuts that were keeping them operational, just draining more public tax money. And when Colorado said, no, we're not going to give you those tax cuts anymore, like you have to actually produce your own profit, your own revenue here. We're not going to continue to subsidize you further. Then they closed their operations, and now they can get subsidized through ICE contracts. And the difference here too between a private prison that is operating presently within our judicial system versus a private prison that is operating presently within our immigrations and customs enforcement system is that most of the people detained here are not criminals in any way. They've never been charged with any crime. They're not going to be charged with any crime, and they're not going to have any kind of like habeas corpus. You can actually go to ice.gov's and /detention statistics and pull the detention statistics directly from the ICE website per facility. And so for Geo, if we look at those detention statistics, we see that they have a 70% non-criminal detention population. That means that the vast majority of people interned in those sites are not criminals and aren't being charged with a crime.
Yeah, that's certainly not the narrative that the administration is trying to push around immigrants. And, for the record, I don't think anybody, even criminals, should be forced to do slave labor for corporations. But it is particularly egregious that these are people who are not even being accused of a crime, let alone convicted.
Certainly. I mean, overstaying your visa is a civil misdemeanor in the same way that overstaying your car registration is. It's not a crime in any way. I feel like a lot of conservative rhetoric right now is centered around painting people who overstay their visa as like murderers and rapists when they haven't even been charged with the kinds of crimes that the president has already been convicted of.
Yeah, good point. Good point. None of them getting charged with fucking treason.
Or rape. I mean, being held civilly liable for rape is a pretty damning thing for someone who wants to say that they're about criminal justice reform. CoreCivic, one of the other companies they're planning to open the Walsenburg facility, they just paid out $28 million in a lawsuit for an inmate in Montana who was beaten nearly to death by gangs. And they were just letting it happen. They were encouraging it to happen because this was an exploitation scheme. They were getting some monetary benefit out of this, and that's why they've been found civilly liable for that negligence within their facility. It's not about criminal justice reform when the guards at the prison are in league with the gangs in the prison.
Yeah, no, it almost sounds like it's operating almost like it's almost like a human trafficking bent, right? Because like it's basically they operate like a cartel of rounding up people who, like you said, are guilty of a crime on a similar tier in some instances as having outdated car registration,
which isn't a
God
crime.
knows, right, for sure. This, yeah, and if you fucking drive around Denver, you would see 10,000 people out of state or out of date registrations. But so they have these people who are committing, civil violations of the lowest order, and then they're coercing them to work for-profit prisons. So I mean, that to me jumps out as like cartel human trafficking style behavior.
Yeah, and it's not so much even like coercing implies that they might get something out of it. It's a so for example, Menacall et al. VGO Group, which is the lawsuit against Geo right now on the slave labor thing, that they were enforcing this under threat of solitary confinement. But if we go and look at the detention statistics, there's 316 solitary confinements at the GeoIce Detention Center in Aurora in just fiscal year 2025. So they're doing this. You get to be in a box or you get to work. It's a labor camp.
Right. Labor camp. Yeah. I mean, that's obviously horrendous. I'm curious, what type of reaction do you feel like you've been getting since this, maybe we don't want to call it an organization, since no concentration camps
Coalition.
has, been more publicly facing? Has it been positive? Have you faced friction from the community? What has that been like?
I feel like at least from my perspective, and I've been, to be fair, in a little bit of an echo chamber because I've been mostly doing outreach to already active activists, building that coalition. But as far as from the communities on the ground, when we were in Hudson, we went to a lovely little carniceria in town, and the whole protest all went over there to give a little injection of money into the community, and everybody there was great, and everybody there was very positive. Down in Walsenburg, there are people protesting every single Friday in Walsenburg at the Huerfano County Detention Center, which is one of the planned new sites. That community has been really coming out, but that community has also been clashing a little bit. There has been counter-protester violence towards those protesters. People have gotten maced with bear spray. People have gotten into physical confrontations with counter-protesters who have attacked them. Someone went to the hospital recently. What I hear from the activists there is that there's some fear within the community about speaking out because there's this fear of political violence from the right that's been playing out over and over again in those communities.
That's really interesting. I can imagine so, because a community like Walsenburg, or there's one in La Junta, these are very, very rural communities. Like they are pretty
Hudson
there,
as well. I mean, Hudson's closer to Denver than Walsenburg is, but it's very, it's a rural community. And these private prison companies, they come into these rural communities preaching prosperity and jobs. What prosperity has Geo provided to Aurora? There's no prosperity that comes with opening a private prison. We've got a few resources out on our website, one from MIT, one from the University of Missouri, and one from the ACLU, that really showcase that the statistics, the historical statistics of opening a concentration camp, opening a private prison in your community, results in a much more stagnant economy, that there's not this prosperity that's promised. So home values go down when you're near a private prison, and businesses are deterred from opening new businesses. Retail sales go down near private prisons. Educational attainment goes down near private prisons. These communities become reliant on them as the only employer because there can be no economic growth, and the management of these facilities is not hired from people in Hudson. It's hired from within the private prison system already, moving them from another facility, promoting somebody at another facility into running this one. The only jobs that are really going to be offered is, low-level detention positions that will go away when they deem it no longer profitable. If they're meant to be part of this mass deportation, then we assume that the mass deportation will end eventually. Migrant people living within our country are a finite resource. And so they're going away. They're not meant to be forever. And if they are meant to be forever, then they're not ICE detention. They're not immigration facilities. Then it's something else entirely under the guise of immigration reform.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Because it is. Yeah, it is. And you would think that maybe they would learn, these rural communities, if they all have like these abandoned old private prisons. It's like seems like you've already probably been down this road of like, yeah, we all got jobs and we were all very reliant on the private prison, and then it went away and the jobs went away. Like you would think that the community would maybe not want a repeat of that. But I also know that the economy sucks and people are just desperate for jobs. And so I could see how they might like look at the short-term gains, and not think about the long-term impact, especially because, especially if they're kind of reactionary and kind of racist and already don't like immigrants. It's like I can see why
I feel
they
like
might fall
painting
for it.
rural people as like inherently conservative is a tactic of the right. That this sort of like urban rural divide that's created in this country. I'm from Havre, Montana, which is a very small rural community in Montana, and I've seen that happen there. There's this sense of I'm not really part of my community unless I agree with these increasingly horrendous things, and I feel like people are starting to wake up to that a little bit. But there's a lot of rural outreach that has to be done, that by anybody other than just the Republican Party, because they're the only ones that are reaching out. A lot of people there feel abandoned by the Democrat Party because, what once was the party of workers' rights doesn't necessarily feel like that some days anymore. They've had a lot of opportunity to raise the minimum wage during the Obama years, during the Biden years, and they never did that. Union busting has always been a problem in this country, and it hasn't changed a whole lot between Republican and Democratic leaders. The unions had a hard time supporting Biden. They weren't going to do it, and that's not just culture war. That's real problems within our society and how we view workers. And so is immigration reform.
I just want to echo that 100%, not to pull the aperture out too far, but I also come from like more or less rural America, and this sense of being abandoned by the Democratic Party, I think they're correct. I think the Democratic Party has more or less abandoned the working class as it increasingly becomes this class of, wealthy neoliberal elites, and not to put too fine a point on it, but like you were saying, the Democrats, it's been a long time since they've been the vociferous voice of unions, and there's no party in this country calling for universal child care or maternity leave or paternity leave or stronger worker protections or anything like that. And in as much as the Democratic Party kind of accidentally falls into that sometimes, it is certainly not their primary goal at this point. And if someone from the Democratic Party would say it is, well, then your messaging on that fucking sucks. And there's a reason why rural America and the working class feels abandoned by you. It's because you abandoned them.
Yeah. I hate to say that that's true, but I'm not a blue no matter who person, and I hate having to choose between a douche and a turd sandwich. And that's just the reality that
Shout
we're
out to
in a
the
little
South
bit.
Park reference.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Shout out to Matt
Yeah,
and Trey.
totally.
Say no concentration camps in Colorado in your episode, please. But yeah, there's this rural divide. There's a company that I just spoke at. I talked a little bit on a Zoom call that Detention Watch had. They're a national organization focused on human rights abuses in detention, and there was another person who had spoke, this guy Ian, from Innovation Law Lab in New Mexico, and they've really had to develop that messaging of like moving themselves away from, I don't know, this like push back against rural America, or this like dismissal of rural America. But it's important to highlight that what the Republicans are doing, while it may be more effective right now, is not any better. They're not going in and helping rural America. They're ruining farm subsidies, and they're creating this culture war that tells people that the people who grow our crops, build our cities, take care of our infirm, these kinds of jobs that immigrant people largely hold within their communities presently, should not be accepted as their fellow countrymen because of their heritage. And that seems so wholly un-American to me.
Oh yeah, no, I mean 100%, and like, yeah, make no mistake about it. As much as I think we have our sights trained on the failure of the Democratic Party to offer any kind of resistance to what the Republicans are doing, that does not mean that there's any amount of sympathy or support from us for the Republican Party. Of course, like you were saying, they market themselves or try to position themselves along these culture war lines as the party of the working class, and they so clearly aren't, for the reasons that you were elucidating. They go in, they strip social safety nets, they are whatever manifest and litany of things that the Republican Party in this country does to destroy people's rights for collective bargaining, all things that directly are targeting the working class.
Certainly.
It's one of those things where the Democrats as a party so deserve to lose. It's just a shame who they have to lose to. And as you were saying, the Republican Party is far and away, I consider them the biggest threat to working class advancement in this country by a pretty comfortable margin. So.
Everybody's just focused on their shareholders, and that's a problem.
Yeah. Some of whom have shares in private prisons.
Absolutely, on both sides.
Repulsive and unfortunate.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to ask really quick, what has been the biggest challenge that you've faced in your, capacity as doing outreach for No concentration camps in college? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what's been the biggest challenge you've faced?
Well, I don't know what I'm doing. This is the first time I've done anything like this. My activism background is varied, but I'm an unaffiliated and activist who is working independently. And so I don't have this huge base already of, ethos that I can build from. This credibility that existing organizations have built over so long. And so for me to just walk in and be like, you should all unify behind these 5 demands that I wrote is a huge ask. Especially these national level organizations that have spent years developing their messaging and stuff. For me to just say, hey, we're all unifying behind this messaging is very difficult ask. And it's been reliant heavily on just being confident that those 5 demands are not a big ask, and that what I'm doing here is something that people can collectively agree upon. And there's always going to be these issues of, like, Denver communists don't want to work with the Democrats, and maybe the Democrats don't want to work with the Palestine protesters, etc., etc. And they have these ideological differences, and those ideological differences can cause us to tear each other apart unless we remain focused. And maintaining that focus is a full-time effort. Not that there's any, honestly though, within our coalition, we haven't had much infighting, and that's because of that focus. Oh my God, did you hear that? Did you hear that explosion?
Window?
That was my cat.
Oh man.
Yeah. Her name's Scooty. Short for Scootanya Putanya. But yeah, she just knocked over a big pile of pictures I was gonna hang up. Good job, Scooty. Well done. Anyway. I lost my train of thought there. The hardest part is keeping people unfocused, but people have been very on focus. And I just got an email saying that there's a website misspelling. Got it. Cool. We'll fix that.
Well, we love a guest appearance. This is our first guest appearance from a cat that we've had, so we deeply appreciate that. Before we wrap up here, and Dorian, thank you for painting a portrait of your efforts and for your work in this organization.
Is that a portrait of Dorian Grey?
Can we ask?
Yeah.
Was that
a portrait of Dorian Gray reference?
Yeah, absolutely it was. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Can you tell us about the vampires?
Oh, sure.
And the
yeah, sure. We could talk about the vampires. So, the last time that I was in the press was for the Denver Post, and I was running a street medic sanctuary during BLM on 10th and Sherman, and largely I was getting my donations through the Vampire Court of Denver, and that was pretty awesome. So the Vampire Court is like a social club of cosplayers. Some of them take it way too seriously. That sort of exists in every city. It's kind of like a weird little secret society, but also not really, and also they're not really connected and have no power. But I was so super well connected with them because I would attend all of their events, often bartend them. I was the VIP host of the Denver Vampire Ball for a while, and they became kind of my patrons in that effort, patrons to that activism. I have since then really distanced myself from that specific group because they pulled a lot of terrible things. They exploited a lot of people's labor without payment, and they exploited a lot of women for their physical attractiveness to be around. They're sort of like company. And that was very creepy and not something I wanted to be a part of. And so I made a big split from them. And now whenever people bring up vampires, I'm always like, don't trust vampires. It's a little tongue-in-cheek.
Don't trust vampires.
Don't trust vampires.
You heard it here first. Denver Protest Podcast rule. Don't trust vampires.
But every once in a while, they can help to fund your activism.
But they're creepy. That's what we've learned today, is the vampires are creepy. Mm-hmm. So,
allies of racial justice, but not of the working class.
And I also would like to state that this was a different group than is the one that currently runs the Denver Vampire Ball. The Denver Vampire Ball is currently run by Julian Black, who's a lovely human person. Lovely vampire person.
There are some. There are good vampires
Certainly
out there. Some, I assume, are good vampires.
There was the Blackheart Court of Dallas, Texas, and they were a nonprofit vampire court charity that funded a lot of like anti-bullying programs through having these huge events, and they were these massive galas, Gothic galas, that were all going to a good cause, but they had to go and defend themselves at I think the Texas General Assembly. They had to go and like defend their nonprofit status as a vampire court, and they all showed up in like full regalia. It was sick.
That's pretty
Wow,
awesome. I just imagine like Greg Abbott like trying to hire Van Helsing to
That's incredible. Incredible things happening in Texas.
Yeah. But no, Dorian, sincerely, thank you so much for your time.
For sure.
If people want to get involved with no concentration camps in Colorado, if people want to learn more, where can they find that?
NoCampsColorado.org. We have a contact page on there. That contact page goes straight to my email, as well as the emails of several other sister org representatives. We have a Discord server where we make announcements and stuff, and we do some calls to action for anytime we're attending a protest in mass, like anytime we're attending a protest as a coalition. I'm going to be posting that in there. There's discussions in there if you want to get involved with our web design, work on the website a bit. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of different moving gears in this huge process, and it's a huge task at hand. So open call to action.
Yeah, genuinely,
We
like
love
if you
it.
want to get involved in this campaign, please come join the Discord. We need more help. All the help. All the hands.
Yep. And you know, everybody here is also members of our Discord. This whole campaign started as a post on the Denver protests subreddit, in response to those FOIA request findings, and you know, just me being like, hey, we need to come together as a community, as an activist community in Colorado to fight this. This can't be just, you know, PSL's fight. This can't be just Casa La Paz's fight. This can't be just DACAC or Unidos' fight or whoever's fight. It's got to be all of us.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Well, it's awesome. It really is. It's a great cause. It's a great organization. And we really appreciate you taking the time, Dorian. Was there anything else that you wanted to plug before we wrap, or how are we feeling?
Yeah. There is an open call for organizers that ends on October 10th. So they want everybody to have what they're doing planned by October 10th. And it's open to anybody to get involved with, that the Detention Watch has put out for Dia de los Muertos. So they would like people to have it's a massive call to action, mass protest call to action for Dia de los Muertos on November 1st. And if your org would like to get involved with that, Detention Watch is looking for volunteers.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. Well, I think that about does it for our interview with Dorian Grey with No Concentration Camps in Colorado. It's been an absolute pleasure. Dorian, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll see you out there.
See you out there.